Hello, it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to share with you the decks that I worked with and a few of the practices that I engaged with throughout the month of August. So I was trying to think, and I was looking in my little planner here to see if I had any real memories or reflections or things that I wanted to talk about, and look, it's totally blank. So maybe I didn't do anything really remarkable in August. That's totally possible. I mean, we went camping, which I shared a video about that with my members, along with a bunch of other stuff throughout the month. But it looks like mostly it was about practice this month. It was about the monthly medicine for me, and it was about the decks that I worked with. So that's really what we're going to focus on. I do have a couple of books that I want to mention, which we'll do at the end, and a few odds and ends that I thought I would share, but clearly I don't really have any other reflections besides the things that I worked on and worked with. So let's just jump right in. Oh, I forgot to mention, but we'll also do the obligatory journal share at the end as well. So the main decks that I worked with and really have been working with over the last few months are the decks that I use for the monthly medicine, which is the guided tarot practice that I offer through my membership on this channel. Those tend to be the sort of foundational decks that I work with throughout each month, pretty much since we started that this year. So I think have been having just one or two main decks that I focus that work on. This month I pulled in a few other things, so we'll definitely talk about that. The primary deck and the deck that I used to set my intention for the work that we were doing for the monthly medicine is the Mysteries of the Black Madonna Tarot. Now, this is a deck that was very, very graciously, technically, I suppose, traded to me, but really not. It was a gift. And I'm so thankful to the person who gifted this to me because this was a deck that I had pretty much said I wasn't going to get because of various reasons, right? But I'm so glad that I had it, particularly for this month. And I'm a big believer in decks show up for you when they're meant to. And so I feel like this deck showed up for me just at the right perfect time that I was meant to work with it. And it became the foundational deck for my monthly medicine practice. And so during the month, basically during that practice, we were setting a goal and working through it and using tarot to support that. And so one of my goals, or my really big goal, was kind of breaking down some walls and some barriers that I have built up that have kind of kept me from moving forward in various aspects of my life. And that was a little bit my intention when I started, or I thought maybe it might be. And then when I pulled my first card for this working, which you'll see all of this reflected in my journal as well, I ended up with the Kali card. And so that card was all about tearing down walls, and it was just absolutely beautiful card and an energy to work with. So it was the Black Madonna via Kali. And that very much became a focus energy for me, but I did end up tapping into other goddesses along the way, goddesses that would show up in this deck. And so that was really fantastic to be able to have that. You'll see here in a little bit when I show you kind of the odds and ends that I picked up this month as well, that I very much tapped into that energy. Now, the thing about the Black Madonna, and I did pair it, and I'll show you that deck here in a moment, is that it very much reads like the Mysteries of Mary Tarot, right? Which is not surprising, but it's definitely reads more like an oracle for me. I really only ended up pulling in one tarot association, which was the initial tarot association, which was the Tower card. And that was the card that was associated with Kali. And so I did feel like the Tower card was very appropriate for me for August. It was definitely a Tower month in that I was trying to break down those walls and trying to make progress on the things that I was working on. In fact, it was this one here, Shakti Ma, the Crone of Stone and Bone. This was my guiding energy for the whole month. Kali and the Black Madonna became a guiding energy or a guiding force for me throughout the month as well. So that was really fascinating. But a lot of what's in here is more about what we see in the cards, more about what these sort of altar pieces that this artist has created and then turned into this deck. We get more about the story, which is awesome. I have no complaints with that because it really allows us to dive deep into these stories that are relating to the Black Madonna. Now, there is loose tarot associations in that, and I mean, it is technically a tarot. It does have a tarot structure, but I think the associations are pretty loose, and I definitely use it more as an oracle, where I will pull a card, I will see what card it is, and then I will go to the guidebook and read the story. So in that way, it functions very much as the Mysteries of Mary does. It's a beautiful guidebook and it's a beautiful deck, and I am really, really glad that I have it now and that it's come into my collection. It's definitely one I'm going to be hanging on to and will continue to work with. So before we talk about the pairing that I did, let's talk about the deck that I actually paired it with, and that is the Somnia Tarot. Now, this is a tarot deck that I have gone back and forth about or with for since it became available, right? I've watched the creation of it. I've gone back and forth about whether or not this is a deck that I really need. I absolutely love the images. It has a very sort of haunting feel to it. It is very direct for me and very to the point. And it does speak, which is really interesting. And maybe it's because the first pull I did with this deck was in alignment with the Tower Kali card in the Black Madonna. But I feel that this is how Kali speaks. It's no nonsense. It's a little bit haunting. It's a little bit jarring, but it's very direct and to the point. And I just absolutely adore these images. And this is definitely a deck that had this Knight of Wands came up for me a lot. I got a lot of repeat cards in this deck this month. The messages kind of kept coming and trying to, you know, drill into my head that you need to pay attention. This is what you need to be doing, whether you want to or not. But it's just an absolutely beautiful, stunning, haunting, powerful, but very, very direct and blunt reader for me. So let me just show you kind of the pairing with this. And I do want to mention that I first saw this pairing on Rumor's channel, and I'll leave a link to her channel below because it was just, that was where I fell in love with it. And so definitely want to encourage you to check out her channel and check out her work with this deck as well. These pairings, oh my goodness, there's just something about them. A lot of times I would use the Black Madonna very much as I would an Oracle deck, again, putting it in the center for that focus. And I would do readings with the Somnia Tarot around it. There's something about the very stark contrast between the black and the white, the very muted color palette of the Somnia Tarot with the much more vibrant coloring of the Black Madonna. It's not always vibrant, but there's a lot of color in the Black Madonna when you really start getting into the details of these images and all the little things that were put into these little scenes. There's a ton of color, and you kind of and it makes a beautiful contrast to the Somnia Tarot with its very kind of muted, almost hazy kind of a color palette. This Judgment card, it was my stalker. Stalked me. The Judgment and the Lovers card stalked me all month long with this deck. But anyway, yeah, just an absolutely stunning, stunning pairing. They work, you know, on their own beautifully as well. It's definitely not like you need to have these two decks to pair them together. They're both stunning. I do believe they are. I know the Somnia Tarot is available. The Black Madonna, I'm unsure where it stands in its current publication, but I will definitely take a look. And as always, I'm going to link everything for you in the description box below. I do feel like the Somnia Tarot kind of kept giving me repeating cards because I wasn't sitting with them long enough. I wasn't working with them individually. I think to the extent that it was really asking me to. And I think that's why I kept getting repeat cards, because I wasn't listening to the extent I needed to. I wasn't paying attention to the extent that I needed to. And I feel like this deck was kind of calling me out on that. It was kind of telling me like, you know, you need to just stop for a moment and you need to focus on what you're doing, and you need to get this message before you try to move on to the next one. Because when I didn't really integrate the message, it would just throw the same cards back out at me. So totally different prompts, totally different days, but it would throw the same cards back out at me. And so I think that that was really interesting, that it definitely has a kind of no nonsense, pay attention to me kind of an attitude, but also like take your time and stop rushing. So, and yeah, I personify my decks. I did a whole video on it. But anyway, that's the beautiful Somnia Tarot. And again, the Black Madonna was just absolutely wonderful to work with. It's definitely a deck that I will continue to be working with, as well as, you know, working with the Black Madonna energy, learning more about that. It's definitely kind of created a new little rabbit hole for me to go down in my tarot practice and in my spiritual practice as well, because I was incorporating this into more than just tarot. I was definitely letting it be kind of a new facet of my spiritual practice. So those are the two main decks that I used for the monthly medicine, is the Black Madonna, the Mysteries of the Black Madonna Tarot, and the Somnia Tarot. So let's talk real quick about a couple of oracles that I also pulled into my monthly medicine practice. Because Kali was my main energy that I was working with throughout the month, I did end up picking up the Kali Oracle. This is the pocket edition, and it's a new deck to my collection for this month. The artwork, I'm just going to say, is not my favorite. I'm not really a fan of Jimmy Manton artwork. I find the people tend to be very hypersexualized in these decks. That's not really how I see that energy. However, the imagery is quite powerful, and some of the cards, like this kind of artwork, is amazing. I love that. It is a powerful style of artwork, so I can see in that respect how it works really well for a goddess oracle, particularly a goddess such as this. But again, not really my favorite. What I did really like was the messages that are on the back of this deck. I found them to be really wonderful, and to really help me kind of flesh out what was going on. Because there were a couple times where I pull cards and I'd be like, I don't really know what you're trying to tell me. And so, or I was trying to get like more messages from Kali, more information with my readings. And so I would pull one of these cards out. I'll read you one of the messages just so you can kind of get a feel for it. It says, your heart cannot be contained or constrained by what has taken place in your life. Your heart wisdom and empowerment is growing, and soon you shall have the wisdom and courage to accomplish something significant to your soul journey. Trust in the invisible workings of the divine love in your life. Let your heart be at peace as it guides you onward. So beautiful messages in this deck. I use this quite a bit as getting an additional message from Kali. And of course, the messages are written by Alana Fairchild. I may eventually get the larger version of this because I hear the guidebook is quite wonderful. But I do love the pocket edition for just being able to do like a quick pull for more from Kali, like a message directly from Kali. Another energy that showed up for me in the Black Madonna is the Isis, is the goddess Isis. So I ended up pulling in my Isis pocket oracle as well, because there was a week where one of the focus cards for me was the Isis card in the Black Madonna. Again, same kind of artwork. You know, not always my favorite. Some of the cards are really beautiful. I think I've shown this deck before. It has great messages though. And again, I really love this as kind of getting those messages from Isis. This is a deck that I use quite frequently. I do have the larger size of this deck, and I do often use those for altar cards, and we'll get into the guidebook for deeper messages. But just for kind of pulling a message for additional wisdom from the goddess, or to get some clarification, it did work quite well. So let's go ahead and read this one. This is the Wings of Isis. It says, you have a special spiritual relationship with the angelic worlds. Part of your soul purpose is to birth angelic consciousness and values such as fearlessness, compassion, and service to this human culture. This oracle also brings you angelic assistance, intervention, and confirmation too. So great little messages. I really enjoy these pocket oracles. I think I have the majority of them now. Like I have these two, I have the pocket Mother Mary, and I also have the Kuan Yin. Those two I'll probably be working with more next month. I do still use the pocket Mother Mary almost every night, but we keep seeing that repeated, so I won't pull that back out again. But these are the two little goddess oracles that I worked with alongside the Black Madonna and the Somnia for additional messages or further clarity in my work through the monthly medicine. One other little oracle deck that I used a couple of times for just clarification, like when I really didn't know exactly what was being asked of me, is the Master Teacher Crystal Oracle. Again, this is a deck I've shown as well. I really enjoy this oracle deck. To be perfectly honest, I really don't pay much attention to the crystal thing going on here. Occasionally I will get into the guidebook to see more about it, but what I really like is the messaging that's on the cards. So we have Master Deva for spiritual support. We have Balancer for grounding. Nirvana Quartz for clearing karma. Master Healer, self-healing. Emotional cleansing. Chakra balance. Expanding wisdom. Abundance and good fortune. So I really like the messaging that's on these cards, and they work really well for kind of clarifying for me, like, what the heck is this card talking about? So I use it quite often for that. Let me give you an example since we're here talking. We'll pull a card from the Somnia. I'm just gonna pull a card at random from the deck. Oh my goodness. The Judgment card. Again, I don't even know how many times that makes that I've pulled the Judgment card, at least half a dozen, if not more. Okay, so let's just say I don't know what this Judgment card is trying to teach me, what it's trying to tell me. Let's talk a little bit about how I worked with it this month, or how I would work with this deck. So maybe clearly this is a message I still need. Because I feel like whenever I pull cards on a video, it's always a real message for me. So I got the card of soul connection, deeper connection. So that would be, where I would look for that clarity for the Judgment card. What is it trying to tell me? And honestly, at this point, I would a lot of times pull at one of my goddess oracles. Judgment's kind of an energy I associate with Kali, so I'd probably pull a Kali card to get a message for, what do I need to know about that? And so let's just do it, because we're here. Face your fears, for it is the right time and you are ready to overcome them. You will be given the power to fulfill your heart's desire, embrace your path with confidence. Healing around belonging and abundance is taking place within your soul. You are spiritually protected from toxic energies. Recognize that your inner divine badass and commitment to your dreams with conviction. So yeah, that's kind of cool. So a lot of times that's how I would use these oracle decks to kind of clarify what's going on. I would have the kind of, what is this trying to tell me? What is this Judgment card speaking to directly? And again, I could get in the Master Teacher Crystal Oracle. The deck has a ridiculous name, just gotta say. So I could also get into the guidebook and look up, what this has to say, a message about the Deva. It talks about manifesting a deeper soul connection in your life, knowing that things are woven together, all that kind of good stuff. So you can definitely get into that for that kind of a work as well. But I do really enjoy the Master Teacher Crystal Oracle. I've just been calling it the Master Crystal deck. I really do enjoy it for helping me to kind of further clarify what a card is trying to tell me, because sometimes I'm at a loss. Sometimes I'm looking at my cards going, I don't know what you're trying to tell me here, but I will figure it out. So this deck works really well for that. I feel like this deck, because of the particular keywords that are involved, the energy of the deck, for me, it is very much attuned to that kind of soul level of work. And I think that works really well for me personally with the Somnia Tarot and the Kali Oracle, because those two decks really did, and the work that I was doing was really about, you know, making progress toward the goal, right? Sure, on a mundane level, but it was also very much speaking to the idea of kind of connecting beyond that, connecting deeper. And I feel like this deck worked really, really well for that. So that was the Master Teacher Crystal Oracle, another just kind of basic oracle deck I used for helping me to clarify some of my readings throughout the month. So next, let's take a look at the deck that I used for my Simple Sunday readings. That's a little 3-card reading that I post on my public Facebook group. And for that, this month, I was using the Rebirth Tarot. This is an indie deck. I think I've forgotten to mention what's indie and what's mass market. So far, all the oracles I've shown you have been mass market, and the 2 tarot decks have been indie. This is also an indie deck. This deck is super cool. I really enjoy the minimal color palette. I enjoy the simplicity of this deck, but there's definitely depth in it. It's one of those decks that I think we would probably call a pip with feelings, because we do only have kind of a pippy style card. There's not a full scene depicted like we saw in something like the Somnia Tarot. There's just kind of the number of things, but we also do get a little of an indication of some symbolism that we can tie into. And I think that works really, really well for this particular deck. And I really enjoyed working with it. I wasn't sure how it was going to work. I love this 2 of Cups. Wasn't sure how it was going to work for just kind of a simple 3-card reading that does tend to lean a little bit more into the sort of self-care realm for me most of the time. But I found that this deck was actually quite lovely. I love this Lover's card. Like, I like so many of the images. Oops, got the extra card in there. And it's a beautiful reader. It just has a very clear, direct, to the point. Again, very pippish, but I love that we have the addition of the elements in there to kind of help add another layer of symbolism and to give us something to draw into with this particular deck. I haven't talked too much about shuffling. The Somnia Tarot shuffles well, but it's large and I have to break it down. Once I break it down, it shuffles well. The same with the Black Madonna. Both of those shuffle well once I break them down into the multiple pile thing. This deck, however, did I show you the backs? Here's the backs. This deck is a joy to shuffle. It is like the perfect size. I have no trouble getting my hands around it, and oh, that's a bad shuffle. There were days where I would just take this deck out and shuffle it, because despite my inability to shuffle correctly right this 5 minutes, this deck is such a joy to shuffle compared to every other deck that I worked with this month. It was definitely the easiest shuffle. And so for that, it would often be the deck that I would pull out, not just for my Sunday readings, but also when I just wanted a quick message, or when I wanted to just kind of take a little break from whatever it is that I'm doing, spend a little time shuffling, kind of like a little meditation, a little mindful moment, and then pull a couple cards to get a message for in the moment. Y'all, I gotta tell you, I had so many court cards and majors this month. It just keeps happening. I keep pulling mostly majors and court cards this month. So clearly I have some things that, big things that I need to work on, and some things that I need to work on embodying, right? Because that's how I see those court cards, is things that I need to, the embodiment of their energy, and how I need to go about being that energy in the world. So yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful deck. I really enjoyed working with it. I didn't actually pair it with anything this month, but I think I have quite a few beautiful, similarly aesthetic decks that would work really well for pairings with this particular deck. So it's definitely one I'll be getting into again. I really, really enjoyed it. It's aesthetically, it's right up my alley, and I like the interpretations on the cards. They're a little bit different. I don't think this deck came with a guidebook or anything. I think it's just the deck, but it's a beautiful reader, and I really, really enjoyed it, particularly for those 3-card readings. It was fantastic for that. So again, that one was the Rebirth Tarot. Okay, so the 3 decks that I worked with alongside a fiction writing project that I've been doing is the Dark Angels Tarot, the Heaven and Earth, and the Endless Oracle. So this is another mass market deck. Actually, this one's a great shuffle too. I edged mine in black because it just, you know, it looks good. This, when I was talking about this deck with my members, I was kind of joking that it's like a Monet deck. It's like if you're kind of keeping it a little bit at a distance, it's cool. But if you get like super close in on these images, it's, they're a little, there's a lot going on. Let's put it that way. There's a lot going on in here. So it's an interesting deck. I really enjoyed the energy and the vibe of it. The Dark Angel theme of it is what I was tapping into in terms of the work that I was doing, relating this back to my fiction work. This magician cracks me up. There's a lot of cards in this deck that kind of make me giggle, and that's not really like, it's not a bad thing at all. But I'm getting older, my eyes aren't so great, and so occasionally I would come across cards where I'm like, I can't quite make out what's going on in a lot of detail. I don't know why there's so many reversals in here. Clearly I didn't shuffle properly, but yeah, it's an interesting deck. I do quite enjoy it, to be perfectly honest with you. Another deck that I used, again, for a fiction writing project. I did use each of these decks for just various things throughout the month as well. And I'll, you know, talk about that here in a moment. But this is I don't know why I'm showing you the sides. Here's the backs because I edged it, I guess, is why I'm showing you the sides. This deck is cool. I really like it. It's, again, it's a deck that I used for my fiction writing project. I will say the artwork is stunning. It's terrible on camera because it's glossy, but and it's a little bit hard for me to shuffle, but I think it'll break in. My big issue with this deck is the titles. I have the hardest time reading what's on them, which is fine, except for some of them are not titles, they're keywords, and like I kind of would like to know what the keywords are, and I have a really hard time reading it. Again, it's a scripted font. It's really thin, and it just doesn't stand out very well against the little banner background thingy that they have going on. This is the Pagan Otherworld and the Darkness of Light had a baby, and that is the Heaven and Earth, which I actually really dig. So yeah, it's cool. I like the artwork. I don't think there's any diversity. Like, there's probably not in the again, I've got reversed cards again. Oh my goodness. Clearly I was not being very mindful with my decks this month. Probably because these were like ones that I just had at hand and was using for various things. I don't think there's any diversity in that deck either. This is the Endless Oracle, which is, I think it's still currently funding on Kickstarter. I did a sort of walkthrough, I guess. Yeah, it was a walkthrough of this deck. And I have to tell you that since then, this deck has not left my table. I have used it for all kinds of things, all kinds of readings. It works really well as a focus card. As I mentioned in the walkthrough, there are things going on in the skies, and that is a huge part of the work that I've been doing with this, is definitely pulling in those associations, which has been absolutely fantastic. The artwork is stunning. And it looks beautiful with these two decks as well, but let me move them around, because here's what I've been doing is before I sit down to work on my fiction project, and I feel like these are like, let's try to get them more even. So before I would sit down to work on my fiction project, I would pull cards from each of these decks. And what each of these represent is the Heaven and Earth would represent me as the writer, the creator of the story. I would have the Endless Oracle in the middle to provide a bridge or a conduit to the story, which was represented by the Dark Angel Tarot, which is similar to the theme of the fiction project that I'm working on. And so I would use these as a way to help me kind of look at, here's where I am currently as the creator, the writer of the story. Here's what I need to kind of tap into in order to help this part of the story find its way. And I found that to be really, really helpful. I did this pretty much every time before I would sit down to write. But if I also got stuck, a lot of times I would use these 3 decks in the same configuration to kind of help me get unstuck, to be like, okay, this is where I am, usually why I'm stuck, and then, you know, here's what I need to do to get this to come out of this situation. And it worked really, really well for that. I gotta say. I also used, just to mention, I also used the Heaven and Earth for just random things that I did as well. Again, a lot of times because my working decks, the main decks that I'm using for the month, they are sitting out on my desk in a basket. They tend to be ones that I will pull. However, I do have like baskets of decks just readily available to me, so I can grab a plethora of decks from a plethora of sources. But I do tend to kind of sit in that same atmosphere and end up working with decks that kind of resonate with the overall work that I'm doing this month. I do feel like these decks actually resonate really well with that Somnia energy, with the Black Madonna energy, and with the Kali energy that I had as my primary focus for the month. So even though these I was working on outside of that practice as kind of their own thing, right? But they also fit within the kind of whole vibe and energy I had going on for the month with all of these decks. So the last 3 decks that I want to share with you take us way outside of that. And that was kind of the point of them, I think. I just did a video on sharing my 3 card reading that I've been doing every morning for most of August using the Tarot of Curious Creatures, the Housewives Tarot, and the Zombies Tarot, which this has just been the most fantastic way to start my day. It's also been a lot of fun to just dive into whenever I need to pull in one of these particular energies or the other. So real quick, we'll just talk about them. I'm not going to go into too much detail because, again, I did an entire video on this, but I kind of dig this deck. I really, really didn't think I would. And yeah, it's not my usual thing, but I kind of love it. I love the humor. It's one of those decks that just, yeah, puts me in a good mood. That was that tag that we did this month as well too, right? And I think this was in there. And I think the Housewives was in there as well. And the Zombie Tarot should have been, but I forgot it. Anyway, there's just something about these creatures that are just, they just bring a smile to my face. They just make me look at the light side of things, which is where they come into in this reading. And the Housewives Tarot also, it's been a deck in my collection for a really long time. It also has a really great energy, has a lot of cheeky humor to it. But I also find it to be kind of very like grounded in the real world, which is kind of fabulous. And so it kind of shows me like the focal point, the thing that I'm going to be like focusing on, right? Again, I did a whole video, so I don't want to go into it too much, but these were decks that I worked with almost every single day this month. And then we have the Zombie Tarot, which was, again, it's another deck that actually has a lot of humor to it. And it's a deck that I think often gets kind of thrown into that, that novelty deck category, and I would wholeheartedly disagree because I have several novelty decks and there's no substance to those. This deck has serious substance and it has serious humor, and I just adore it. Like, it's a deck that I do a lot of work with in October, but I really want to start pulling it in more into the rest of the year, into the rest of my practice, because it's just amazing. So as I showed in that video, I would do kind of start my day with this little reading of here's the focus and the light side and the dark side, or kind of the, I hate to say dark because that gives a different connotation, but the unrealized of the situation or of the day. So a lot of times I use this just to start my day. And this is what I need to know about my day. And I love the way that they all work together. They're just kind of fantastic. We'll just do a few because, again, I did a whole video on this. But that was the Tarot of the Curious Creatures, the Housewives Tarot, and the Zombie Tarot. So let's go ahead and take a quick flip through my tarot journal. I did end up getting a new tarot journal. This is a A5 Archer and Olive, which I have set up to use for the rest of the year. try to get this straight for you. So I've done a little bit of, you know, decorating in the beginning. I need to still write my intentions. And then basically I'm just jumping right into August. And here I have my August cover page. So keeping things pretty similar to as I have done before in printed journals, where I kind of have just a cover page. I have a little bit of usually some sort of an imagery. And then I've been putting the focus from the monthly medicine in here. And then this time I also included a little quote from the monthly medicine guide, and then the list of all the decks I worked with this month, which was quite a bit. So that's what my cover page looks like. And then I ended up adding or creating a moon energies page, and these were the moons that we worked with and the intentions or the energies that we worked with throughout the month in the monthly medicine. Most of what is in here is actually monthly medicine stuff because that is the bulk of my tarot practice. So we started the month off with our intentions, and as I mentioned, I got Kali, the Shakti Ma, and the Tower, and that was my main intention card for the month. And I have a whole bunch of write-up about that card that I pulled from the guidebook, and then I have an additional 3-card reading that I did. I'm still using my little date stamper for all the dates. I think I started the month using stamps, and then as the month went, I just ended up doodling more than anything. And I decided to indicate anything that was a monthly medicine just by drawing a black line across the page, and that to me is a visual indication that that's part of, you know, this whole monthly medicine work that we were doing in August. So here was our Wednesday medicine reading. You can see I have all my cards here, my reflections, and some additional oracle cards that I pulled for clarification. I think this week I actually did my entire practice on camera for my members, which was really fun. Again, you can see the black lines kind of indicating that those are all part of the monthly medicine and the date stamp at the top. I did try to kind of match the font that I had used in the monthly medicine guide, which was kind of fun. Sometimes I did okay, sometimes not so much. But so here we have a random spread that I did on Thursday for connecting with the inner self, and kind of just, I think I was doing this just as a see where I am. Again, this is another spread that I did on camera with my members. So I pulled an oracle card and my 3 tarot with the rebirth, which I love. I have my reflections. I had doodled the big flower on the page before I laid any of it down. So if I think I'm gonna do a big floral doodle, I like to put that down first, and then I can lay cards and then write around it, which is always fun. So then we had our Friday prompt for the monthly medicine. So there's my cards. Again, I was still using the Kali card as my focus, and then this was my card for that day. Then I did a Curious Creatures reading, which was fun. And I think this is when I realized that like I wanted to start working with this deck every single day. And so that's when I started, like right after this was when I started doing my 3-card spread with it. Again, I doodled the dandelions on the page first, and I wanted to kind of incorporate it into this page as well because I knew I was going to do my simple Sunday spread, as I had done this in the morning and I was planning on doing this in the evening. I think that's how it went, although it's been a while since then, right? I do get a lot of questions about how I get my cards in here. I think I say this in every video, and I do have actual tutorial videos on this process, but for this, basically, I just put my cards on top of my color copier scanner, and I literally make a color copy of them at a reduced size. Generally, these are 50%, so I reduce it down to 50% of the card size, and then I literally cut it out and paste it into my journal like a toddler, but it's so much fun. So anyway, this is my simple Sunday spread with the rebirth. So what we were looking at, the 3 prompts and my reflections. Moving into the next week, we have the monthly medicine for the second week, and I had Isis was my main card, the sacred hag of the black veil. This one was obviously about maintaining our momentum. That's what the focus was for the week. I also pulled an Isis card. Again, I do have some stamping. I liked the sunburst motif for Isis work. That just works really well. And so I did incorporate that quite a bit. Anything, again, as I've mentioned a million times before, anything that's written in a different color is generally not my words. It's generally something from a guidebook or some sort of source material. So I know looking at that's not me. Anything written in black cursive is me. Again, date stamp, and you know, that big black line across the top telling me this is a monthly medicine reading. This is a continuation. Okay, I'm just looking back going, what did I do here? So this is the continuation, the 3-card pull. I had a lot to write about Isis, so I just went ahead and filled this page, and then this was the 3-card pull that actually related back to Isis being my focus card, and then these were the 3 cards that related to the prompts that we had for that day. Then I did a communication spread for a relationship, and kind of just, I noted it in here because I wanted to remember that I did it, but it was kind of an in the moment thing. However, when I see this spread and these cards, it kind of does also click on my mind what was going on at that time. So if something along that same lines were to happen again, I could maybe return to the spread and see kind of what the guidance was at that point, and I can think about what I did moving forward with that. So sometimes I find that helpful, even though it's kind of a, like, there's something going on, is in the moment, but I'm going to go ahead and just put it in here so that I can remember it later on. So then we have our big medicine reading for the week. Again, still working with Isis. I think I pulled an Isis and a Kali card for this week, as well as my cards from the Somnia Tarot for my reading. The motivation reading that we did, again, still working with that Isis energy for the end of that week. And then this was the Simple Sunday, which I don't know, I love the kind of rivery thing. So very simple this month. I think because there's a lot of writing and not as much in the design stuff or in the excess, you know, decorative stuff. There's probably a lot of different reasons for that. One is probably because these were deep personal readings for me. So I was focused more on the readings, more on the reflections, and less on what my journal is going to look like. Honestly, that was really not even a thought for this month. So I wanted to doodle a little bit just to pull in the energy, but it really was more about the cards and the readings. And so that tells me that I'm definitely more trying to focus on the reading itself and use the journal as more of just a place to reflect on. And, you know, not as much as a creative exercise, which though my journals very much are. And I think that that's a wonderful way to express your practice, is to have very creative, very decorative journals. But this kind of journal that's just, you know, just your cards and your reflections totally works well too. So this was our overcoming challenges on the last quarter. Again, pulled a focus card and then my reading for that card. And I don't know, I was feeling the kind of mountainous tree energy, which I felt quite a bit this month. But I felt like mountains for me kind of represent challenge. So I definitely, as you can see, incorporated that. And I had some kind of tree energy going on because there's a lot of little trees in here. Like I kept getting really, really repetitive cards. I mentioned that already, but the Lover showed up a lot, the Knight of Wands showed up a lot, and Judgment showed up a lot. Those were my main cards. This was interesting because I wrote the title, drew the mountain in, and then like, I don't know what I was doing here really. Kind of like the first 3 cards are over here and the last 3 cards are down here. I mean, it works. It works. I know what I did, so. And then here we have the last quarter releasing prompt for that day. And again, 3 cards, my reflections, very bare bones, journaling with the black line. You can see the black line is down here at the bottom. Another Simple Sunday reading. Again, I love to doodle flowers, so I tend to do that a lot in my journal. I'm a flower doodler, so that shows up a lot. It's a very common motif. I don't even have to be working with a plant deck to be doing doodle flowers, because I love them. So that's my little doodle flower, my cards, and my reflection for that particular reading. This was our last big week in the monthly medicine, or our last full week. So we had our big picture reflection. I had pulled these cards have many, many titles. I think it says Virgin of the Living Stone, was also referred to as Our Lady of the Underground, and the Stone, the Labyrinth, and the Black Madonna. And really this card for me was about the Labyrinth motif. There is that Judgment again, and I got tons and tons of court cards and majors this month. Anyway, before I did this, put anything on here, I attempted to doodle a labyrinth in the center of the page. It didn't really come out that well, but you know, it's really not about that, right? It's about the reading, it's about the work. And so anything that I do decorative is really just to support the work and to add a creative layer to it. But Anyway, there's my reflections on that. This one was also, again, kind of a hot mess, but I really wanted that circular imagery, that dark moon energy coming through, but mimicking what I did here with the labyrinth and the circle. And so I colored that in. My Tombow it's running low on me. Anyway, here's my medicine reading. Again, that line, doodled some little trees down here, and then just wrote my reflections here. And then I did pull a Kali Oracle card, but I didn't often make a copy of it and put it in here because it was about the message, not about the imagery. So I just wrote the messages in there. And then I think these are the last two because, yeah, this is the last that I've done for journaling this month in this particular journal. This was the new moon renewal reading that we did with the High Priestess as our focus, and then what we need to know around that. This was kind of what was to be revealed, and this was what we've illuminated. And so I kind of tried to mimic what was going on in the cards in terms of the art work or the design of the page. So I kind of did this little motif here with the white smoke coming up from the chariot, because that is what was illuminated, and then what was still remains to be revealed was my Eight of Cups. And so I kind of tried to mimic the water, the shadow in the water. And then you probably can't see it, but there's also little gray watery squiggles on here. And then my simple reflections, again, date stamp, all my lines. And this was the last reading that we did. There was another activity that followed, a card clearing activity that followed, but this was the last reading that we did. And it was our moon gratitude of finding out, getting a message from our moon partner or our lunar partner. And I pulled the Judgment card yet again. So clearly moving forward, still need to do some work with this Judgment card, which is definitely something I'm going to be doing. So anyway, that was my tarot journal and the pages that I created for August. Look at my weird assortment of decks. All right, before we wrap things up, I just want to share a couple of little items that I got to help support my practice this month. One of the things that we did this month in the monthly medicine was to incorporate a little bit of magic into our work. So we did things like creating a shaker jar, a motivation shaker jar. So this was mine that I created, where you shake it and there's a thing there, right? There's a thing there. I also ended up purchasing this little mini cauldron. Again, I just got it off Amazon. Like, it's nothing fabulous, but we did a little burning ritual, and I used that as a place to do that. I have been meaning to get something like that to keep on hand, because I do that type of ritual quite often. I know I always say I don't actually identify as a witch, but I guess a lot of the things that I do are witchy. That's cool. But I did also pick that up because I found that I really liked, I have bigger things, like bigger bowls and little cauldrons and stuff to do that kind of work in. But I love having something really small and at hand that I can just keep on my desk whenever I feel the need to do that kind of a work. So that was really fabulous. My absolute favorite find of this month is the Kali statue that I ordered from Portland Mary. I have several of her statues now, and I'm kind of collecting all the goddesses that I work with. So the thing that I love about these is I do believe they're all based on her sort of Mary figure. And so underneath here, I think, is the Mary figure, which is really cool. And I love that because of how I work with Mary and goddesses, and that really, really relates to my practice. But it's just absolutely beautiful. So Kali has been hanging out with me on my desk, and as I'm moving into different work for September, I will probably move her to her altar space, which I've created for her on my bookshelf. Another thing that I picked up for my work this month is this Black Madonna chaplet. I think these are from Wings and a Prayer on Etsy. Again, I'll leave it linked below. I like to use these little chaplets, and I have one for all kinds of, they're always they're Mary or archangels or things like that, right? Because it's from, I believe, a Christian store. But I love to have these as prayer beads when I'm doing that particular work or working with that particular energy. I like to have these at hand to help me set intention and to help me do some prayer and meditation work with. So I definitely worked with that a lot alongside my Black Madonna, as well as, anytime I was doing any sort of prayer or devotion or work with the Black Madonna energy. And that was really beautiful. I really enjoyed that. So I think that's it. Well, I guess my tarot journal, that's new, right? That was a new thing that I picked up or that I got for this month. Again, I'm probably going to be just finishing up the year in this printed journal, and I'll just be doing digital stuff for other things because I do still like the digital journaling, but for my core practices, I really like working in a paper journal, so I'll probably finish up with that for the rest of the year. So yeah, I think that's it for me today. I hope that you all had a wonderful August. I wish you many, many blessings moving into September. If you are in the Weaver membership of my channel, we'll be doing self-care, self-love work in September. So that will end up being our focus. So if that sounds like something you're interested in or you're already a member, definitely feel free to check it out. There's always a link in the description box of every video, as well as I also have links for everything that I've shown you here today, just to make it a little bit easier for you if you want to go find out more about them. So that's it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.